Welcome to Science and Wisdom Live, where scientists and meditators meet.
Geshe Namdak, thank you so much. I'm really excited to do this first Meet the Speaker interview with you. These are meant to give us a little glimpse of the people we're talking to in the dialogues. We'll have this dialogue in November with you and several other distinguished speakers. But the purpose of this is just to get to know you a little better. And I'm sure especially now as a monk, you have a very humble attitude, maybe not wanting to always talk about yourself so much. So I really appreciate you making the chance to do this because I think it'll help our audience just understand who you are and how you got here. Well, we wanted to start out by asking about your childhood. If you could tell us about some event from your childhood that you think helped define who you are today.
Yeah, childhood, I don't know. Childhood is a long time ago, but I think when I was a youngster, probably, at the time of university, I think then only the change of life started to happen, so to say. So I was studying hydrology, and I always had a bit of interest in martial arts, and started with hardcore taekwondo, then went to kung fu, and then tai chi. And then I got more interested in the philosophy behind those aspects, especially Tai Chi. And though I was also quite, in the weekends, quite active in parties in the big cities in the Netherlands, particularly Rotterdam, where there's a few kind of, house rave parties all night long that I, used to attend quite a bit in the weekends. So I think in my early 20s, when I turned 20, then I start to have more interest in spirituality of life, so to say, and then stop going to parties, and then I start studying also a little bit Chinese medicine in the weekends, while still undergoing with my studies of hydrology at the university. And that developed in kind of more interest in philosophy, and that took a direction towards Buddhism, so to say, in 1993, when I was turned 23. Then I went to a Buddhist center in the Netherlands called Matre Institute. And actually one weekend, I never had attended any teaching before, but I read a little bit, not much. And then actually one weekend, more or less changed my mind in a particular way, so to say. That, I had many questions in life. So what's the purpose of life? When you can't really get satisfaction? What's lacking? And why are some people suffering more than others? So you have those questions. I had those questions. And in this particular form of Buddhism, which is actually a science of the mind, and kind of its philosophy, so to say, science of the mind and its philosophy. So not that I straight away had all the answers, but I could see there's a lot of information here and openness to reasoning, to do research and ask questions. So that brought me to the idea, I can find some questions answered in this kind of in-depth, philosophy of the science of the mind, so to say. And it started.
Oh, that's great. And so it sounds like you were one of these people really searching for, deeper meaning in your life. Did that carry through when you were, much younger, or was there a specific moment where it flipped for you and you found, your life wasn't satisfactory and you started searching, or were you kind of born in this way of looking for something bigger from the start?
I don't think so. When I was, in a teenager, I never really had any interest in these matters at all, So that came later in life, when I turned about, what is it, I think 18, 19, then interest started developing,
Yeah, very interesting. And so now, obviously, you've made a very deep turn towards the spiritual in your life. Um, can you talk about how that brings you satisfaction and meaning in your everyday life? Now that you've made that decision.
I never, because to become an ordained person is quite, you change your life quite drastically, basically, according to common sense kind of society. So it's quite a decision, but up till now, after being a monk for, 25 years or so, I never really regretted it, the change. And why is that so? Because what we try to do is to understand our mind and its constructive and destructive emotions. And not only understand that, but also how to transform the mind, to generate more constructive way of thinking and to eliminate or transform, so to say, the destructive emotions. So, yeah, it's to train the mind is a long-term goal, and it takes a long time. But over time, you can see the potentials are there and the possibilities are there, and that gives more satisfaction in life, so to say. Yeah.
So it sounds like, the meaning and satisfaction in your life now comes, from these mental techniques that you've learned, just the essence of training your mind to, towards the deeper aspects of understanding reality and the purpose in life.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have to examine the mind and see the potentials for the mind, the possibility to change, and not only possibility to change, but also to develop more constructive forms of emotions opposing to the destructive ones, and that automatically brings more peace of mind, so to say. So, and that is having seen those aspects, I think that's probably gives kind of satisfaction.
Yeah, wonderful. And can you talk about this series that we're beginning with Science and Wisdom? Obviously, is about science and the contemplative tradition. Can you talk a little bit how scientific research has informed any of your, meditative practice or, contemplative training?
I mean, there's a few points in science which help me quite a bit. Is to see research being done in the fields of neurophenomenology. Yeah, so that actually consciousness can influence brain activity. And there's the aspect of neuroplasticity and the possibility to change. So reading that from the scientific background is very supportive to see not only on a subjective level of experience, but it's kind of a reality. That's one aspect, I think, with science. And another aspect is that we always examine, especially in the philosophy, the ultimate nature of reality, so to say. Right? So then if you examine the modern findings in quantum mechanics, and especially I'm quite inspired by David Bohm's view of wholeness and the interpretation of quantum mechanics in that kind of aspect of the implicate and explicate orders. And it's very inspiring to see that if you come from a scientific background with empirical and mathematical kind of language, you come to a kind of similar conclusion as we in Buddhist philosophy actually come by the power of the reason of epistemology and examining reality. So it's very inspiring to see that there's a common ground between the two. And that's true from the point of view of psychology, as I just indicated, as well as from the point of view of quantum mechanics or ultimate reality, so to say. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, as I'm sure you've been watching His Holiness the Dalai Lama's, many different teachings, the abundance of teachings he's been giving. Many times he's said that he now meditates half on quantum physics, when he's considering the nature of reality. Do you have any insight into what he means by that? Is that something that, you yourself do in your meditation when meditating on emptiness or, different aspects of reality? Do you reflect on these quantum theoretical aspects?
I mean, theoretical aspects, I'm not really very knowledgeable about quantum mechanics, of course, but what His Holiness also tells the monks to do is to study the theory, though we don't have the knowledge of the mechanics of the mathematics behind it, but the philosophy of it we can study, and this can be quite helpful because also then we see that although things appear very concrete out there, if you look at the quantum level, then nothing exists in that concrete inherent manner. So everything is interdependent. And that helps us a lot in our philosophy as well when we talk about the different levels of interdependence, and we talk about similar aspects of things don't exist from their own side. It's just, the wholeness or the connection or the relativity of the interdependence is actually a more aspect of the whole than just individual parts. Yeah.
Yeah, so that that things don't exist the way that they seem on the surface, and that when you probe how they exist, it turns out to be interdependent, including the interdependence with the minds and the perceiver, right? I think is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We have a view of the mind-only school of Buddhist philosophy, for example, and it's very much talks about this aspect, that whatever is being perceived by a particular individual depends so much on that consciousness of the individual, because all of us perceive different objects in different ways. Yeah, so that correlation between observer and observed is very evident also in different forms of Buddhist philosophy. And it's very interesting to relate that with what we find in modern physics of quantum mechanics.
I wonder if that's what, I'm always curious, the Dalai Lama's been much more open with his talking about his own practice. And I wonder, what aspects of quantum theory he is reflecting at. Because there is that one, the aspect of breaking things apart into parts, this like a logical analysis that I think we can all understand if you have the education. But then this more, mystical aspect that even science reveals of the interdependence of the mind with the observed phenomenon.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, in the mind only, it talks about previous habituation patterns that we have created for a long period of time, and that influences what appears to our mind. And that's very true in David Bohm's philosophy behind, the things that appear. That it's very much influenced by the observer itself. Yeah, so that's it's very interesting material.
What do you think the dialogue between science and between the contemplative traditions, why do you think this is important? We're about to undertake one, and of course the Mind and Life Institute has been doing this for years. Where do you see the importance of this dialogue between science and meditative tradition, contemplative tradition?
Yeah, I mean, the dialogue, I think, is very important because we use different methodologies, right? In science, we use a different methodology. In the more contemplative kind of traditions, is a different form of approach of reality, of the mind. But that doesn't mean either of those approaches are correct or incorrect. Yeah, I think we can learn a lot from each other, and especially in the fields of the mind science, especially in the field of psychology. Because we have an incredible increase in modern society of the external development, so to say, which brings a lot of benefit to society, but the internal development is lacking. And we see during the recent lockdowns, or the increase of depression and anxiety and fear, and people being unhappy and not satisfied in life. That is quite a problem in society, and that can be addressed, and that can be approached by building these correlations between scientific research as well as contemplative kind of traditions to help to let people recognize these aspects in society are a problem, first step, and then see if there's possibilities to do something about it, and using different technologies or different methods to address the issue.
Yeah, so the contemplative traditions can bring the deeper understanding of the mind to the insights into the material world and the physical world that the scientific method brings. I'm sure you've read a lot of these Mind and Life books. Like I've read at least 10 or 15 of them over the year. They publish every year, and I bet you've attended them, maybe even seen this holiness in the person. Are there any specific examples that come up for you of where you've seen that dialogue between science and contemplative traditions really work well? That it, for you personally, that you recall in your memory and being impactful.
Yeah, I mean, going back to this aspect of the science of the mind, especially, the research being done of meditators who accomplish certain aspects of consciousness or train their mind over a sustained period of time, that has an incredible effect on brain activity. Yeah, so as we all know in the fields of mind and life, Richard Davidson, what he have accomplished. And then together with Daniel Kahneman, they write these incredible books, which actually proves that, accomplished practitioners, so to say, they produce gamma waves beyond the chart of an ordinary brain. And that indicates a kind of spiritual kind of tradition that can train the mind in a way that you can deal much better with afflictions, much better with destructive emotions, so to say. So that's a kind of evidence is right there, and the methodology is right there. And the methods are present. It's just a matter of fact of connecting the two together the scientific world and the contemplative traditions. And then I think if you have a few of those platforms going within society, then something more constructively can be done on the level of a more global aspect of helping the different societies in eliminating these kind of destructive emotions or the problems in society as anxiety, fear, and those kind of depressions, those kind of problems many people are facing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that science has shown genuine transformations to the brain and the brain activity that correspond to what meditators report as their inner experience, you think that's probably one of the biggest impacts it's had for you?
I think so, because those meditators, it's kind of, they spend a lot of time contemplating these aspects of the science of the mind and its philosophy, and by they're producing the results of what we say in the scriptures, what is possible. So evidence is there. So the methodology is there, evidence is there. So there are methods, they work if you apply them in a particular way. So that's very interesting to see, and it's very inspiring as well to see the result is being produced with this kind of methodology. Yeah.
Yeah, it points to, science being able to detect some of these invisible states. Like sometimes when people tell me, they don't believe in immaterial things, I say, well, do you believe in love? Or do you believe in mathematics? And it seems like some of these experiments point toward actually maybe being able to measure some of those things. Like you mentioned gamma waves. Like what does gamma waves off the charts correspond to from a spiritual dimension and experience?
What I've understood from other kind of friends who are in the field of science is kind of, it produces a kind of capacity to deal with issues in life, and to not only deal with issues in life, but not to grasp at emotions. They come, they go. There's a kind of flux. Like if you write in water with a piece of wood, it stays for a little bit and it goes away, right? So that means that if destructive emotions come up, because we all have them, but we don't hold on to them, right? So in a similar way, when I was hearing the story with Paul Ekman, one of the world leaders in facial expressions, as you might have heard of, who examined so many faces for so many years. When he saw a face of His Holiness, he said, "I've never seen a face like that before."
That's great.
It's very interesting because His Holiness, when you talk about the issue, of course, emotion comes and there's expression in the face, right? But then straight away there's a laughter and it's gone. It doesn't stay. There's not that grasping or that holding on to its kind of problems or because everything is in the nature of fluctuation. Everything is nature of impermanence, right? Problems come, abide for some time, and disintegrate. Yeah? So if we grasp at a problem, then only it becomes more intense. So we all have problems, but a lot of mental suffering, I think, can be prevented by using particular techniques. And they are available. And it's been shown that certain of those techniques, they've been very beneficial and seem to work.
So it sounds like that idea of gamma waves being very high corresponds to like resilience and acceptance and presence, openness, without like the tight grasping and.
It's more because one of my friends also who did some research regarding Dzogchen practitioners, when you talk about people who recognize the ultimate nature of the mind, they also score in the same kind of level. And it's true, there's the openness, spontaneous kind of aspects of the mind which doesn't really hold on or grasp to kind of the more coarser aspects of the mind as we see in destructive emotions, for example. Yeah? And it brings more peace of mind and more happiness and the capacity to transform. So that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a state we'd all like to be in. Every once in a while I feel a little bit of that. I'm sure you do too. Okay, the last question. This is about a wish. I think if you were granted one wish that science and contemplative wisdom could come together to solve one current pressing problem together, which problem would you choose? You have a lot to choose from right now. So.
I think the most important issue is the elimination of destructive emotions. Because every problem we have in society, if it's physically caused or caused by verbal expressions of conversations between countries or within a particular society, every physical action of war, every miscommunication is all rooted in our kind of mental attitudes, and those mental attitudes, they can be transformed. And if there's destructive emotions becoming present, then our physical and verbal behaviors can also be destructive and can cause a lot of disturbance in relation with other people and society, as well as complete countries, as you see verbal abuse going between different countries of different presidents or whatsoever. It's kind of, if you go back to the origin of all these problems, is actually rooted in the mind, right? So if we can do something about that aspect, then if we take away all destructive emotions or transform them in constructive ones, then I think it will be a much peacefuler and happy world, or happy planet, so to say.
Yeah, that's very wise, right? Like if all these external problems we face, from politics to climate change, they're rooted in the mind and in destructive emotions. So that certainly seems like the wisest answer. I don't know. I don't know how you could lead everybody towards addressing their own destructive emotions, but I guess at least we can work on ourselves. What do you say to that?
It's not an easy task, right? But you say a wish, so that's my wish. But if it's possible or not is a question. But at least we can go in that direction, right? It's to eliminate all destructive emotions is something to be wished for, but not that easy to be accomplished. But at least we can start to go in that direction.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, that's a very nice way to end. I share your wish with you to eliminate all disturbing emotions.
Yeah, let's hope the wish comes true.
Yeah, may your wish come true. Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to our dialogue, with the other participants in a couple of months from now.